or bands like Under Oath. Under Oath came through on their first ever tour. I think that maybe their second show ever was at Slacker 66.
Welcome to Speak Now or Whatever, with our interview with Chad Johnson, the man, myth, and slacker.
Chad Johnson is the founder of Furnace Fest, as well as the founder of Takehold Records, and has a rich history in the underground music scene here in Birmingham, Alabama. Right on.
So thankfully we're at the very tail end, but it's a bit stressful. But I let Johnny handle all that. He can take the brunt of it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we will let him do that.
Tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing and what the podcast is about. I Googled it and I found a lot of stuff about Taylor Swift, and I was like, wow, I didn't know we were gonna have a Swift combo. But
that's actually what we brought you on for. So we figured we'd get your take on Taylor Swift, and
it's all based on that.
Yeah.
Do
do you want to go ahead and explain?
Yeah.
John?
So what we're doing is because so Brent and I and our best friend Joe, we're in a band, and we wanted to start a podcast, Brent and I, about the discovery of things and about artist interviews and music that we love, artists that we love, and like connect the dots with the people that we interview about how people found the things that they found, and like the things that we love as far as like music and the discovery of things, of how did we come about these things, and especially like the people that we interview, like where did you start and how did you get there? Mm-hmm. And so like the people that we interview and all the musicians and the artists that we interview, we want to like trace those lines for all that. I think that was the genesis of why we wanted to do this.
Yeah. So for an example, our first meeting was with Jeff Becker. And so,
oh, nice.
Yeah. So we met with Jeff, and, our basic kind of questions were like, what was it like being in Seattle during that time frame? Like, tell me all about like, living with Jonathan Ford, or, all these other things. And so, we kind of want to get kind of to the basis of, not just Furnace Fest, but also we want to talk about Slacker. I mean, we want to talk about all the things that you had going on here in Birmingham that really has kind of helped create a lot of the scene for a lot of people.
Well, that's huge, man. I appreciate it, and I love the idea that this goes back to the beginning for people, because I feel like that's something that a lot of us forget about, and
right.
The concept of humble beginnings. Most people don't give time or attention to once something's already kind of taken off and taken shape. So yeah, it's cool. By the way, Johnny says you guys rule. He's I sent him a little screenshot of us talking.
If he says so.
Yeah.
I have one question. I have one question before we launch into this. Do you like what I'm wearing right now?
Oh wow, dude. I was actually trying to figure it out, because from the side and with the drawstring, it was I couldn't quite see it. Dude, that's incredible. Wow.
I am wearing a Blaster the Rocket Man sweatshirt.
How old is that? And like, how long have you had that?
So this is
pretty sure you can't just like jump on the interwebs and get those anymore.
Oh, you can.
Haven't for a
you actually can, Chad.
Yeah,
you can.
No way.
Brent's the one who told me.
I feel like Blaster the Rocket Man is already one big regret for us not pursuing this year, because there was word that maybe they would have some interest, and I don't know what happened. I'm gonna go to our little like working doc, because now you guys got me all inspired, and
I didn't mean to go down a rabbit trail.
No, it's good, man. We have 2 spots left, so maybe one of these bands will drop, and then we'll go after Blaster.
Yeah.
So wait, so you can actually buy Blaster.
Yeah. So
according to Brent, you can.
Yeah, because I kind of just went back, and Blaster the Rocket Man was one of those first bands for me that kind of was somebody handed me a CD, and they said, "Hey, you need to listen to this." And I was probably 13 years old. And I went into it and I was like, well, what is this band doing now?
Yep.
And evidently, I guess during COVID, I'm pretty sure it's the lead singer that kind of came back and started saying, hey, like, I'm going to re-release all these stickers, all this merch, and all this stuff. And so he still does it. And I believe he actually owns a printing company. So he does all this stuff himself.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. That's
and
cool,
so
man. Well,
when he told me that, I looked it up immediately and ordered one immediately because I'm like, I'm going to be the only person around that has one.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like if you wear that at Furnace Fest this year, you will likely get many compliments.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like.
By the way,
that.
Johnny says to be sure that we talk about how awesome he is throughout the duration of the.
Well, tell him that's not going to happen.
Not going to
happen. Nice.
Nope. Thumbs down.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Did you work at Trim Tab for a time, or where do I know you from? Because I recognize you from somewhere.
Where do you know Brent from?
So
yeah.
So we met at Trim Tab, but we also met at Johnny's 40th birthday.
Oh
my gosh, that long ago?
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great memory.
Yeah, because I believe so. I actually asked you, and we can go into this a little bit.
Yep.
I asked you about what the deal was with Slacker 77 because.
That's right. Yeah,
because
I
remember.
Thank you for joggling my memory brain.
Yeah, because I could not figure out the correlation between you and Slacker 77, and so it had kind of been bothering me since I was maybe 14 years old, and so I was just kind of like trying to figure out exactly how that worked out and how that happened. So what is that?
Oh my goodness!
Nice.
This is a piece of artwork that we had commissioned back in the day, and I don't recall whether we ever had this translated into like T-shirts or I think there was stickers maybe. But 2 years ago we did a Takehold Records limited edition run T-shirts of like 50 pieces at Furnace Fest, and they all sold out in like an hour. So I told Johnny, I was like, dude, let's do Slacker 66 this year, and see if anybody. So you guys will be the two that remember, and
100%.
It'll be great. Maybe because of this podcast, there'll be a few more. But the Slacker thing was funny because I first of all had no idea what I was doing. So when someone approached me and said, "Hey, we want to do a similar kind of shop," which really was like, I don't even know how to describe Slacker other than it was a combination of like Star Wars toys, skateboard decks, and tooth and nail gear, mostly with maybe a few random Blaster the Rocket Man stickers,
of course.
But just random stuff that I could get online. And so he had this idea in Myrtle Beach to do something similar that was like I think it was I want to say it was a venue as well, but anyway, it was a cool idea, but it never really materialized into anything that would have been fruitful for Slacker. But then again, I was 23, I think, and didn't really care about something like royalties or what a percentage of revenue could look like. But yeah, it is fun. It's funny to this day because I feel like Slacker 77 actually had more going for them because more people when they hear Slacker 66 correlate that term to like Slacker 77, and then I just walk away feeling dejected.
Amazing.
That was the spinoff, dude. That wasn't the Birmingham original.
No, it was not.
No.
You had to be in Birmingham. You had to be in the suits to know what Slacker 66
Oh, give me a break.
was.
There it is.
How many times did you guys play Slacker, do you think?
Several. Yeah. The last time.
So was Johnny ever in the suits, or was he just always around?
Johnny's
suits?
not musical.
I know. I didn't think
Johnny
so.
doesn't play music.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No. He was just in and around.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
He was both in and around the band.
In and around it. Yeah, for sure.
He's like the cheer. He's like the manager.
Yeah.
The friendager.
Right. So let me go back. So to that point of Slacker 66. So I think I first saw you just having a table at a show, a local show. And you used to do that a lot, right? Like we're talking like late 90s, like mid 90s, that kind of thing. You used to set up like tables for Slacker 66 at local shows, correct?
That is correct. I did
Right.
one time. I was interviewed one time in a magazine, and um they miswrote or misinterpreted the term distro for bistro. So it says that I had started a bistro in Birmingham, and I was like,
Okay.
that's so dope. I wish
It
that I could
is.
claim ownership of a bistro in Birmingham
Oh my
back
goodness.
in the mid 90s.
That's
But
right.
no, dude, you're right. I did. I mean, that I was probably getting music from some of the independent record labels, Christian record labels, or artists like Blaster, and then just setting up at shows. And I would get. I remember one time Mark Solomon got kind of upset at me because I was selling Stavesaker CDs while Stavesaker was playing. Like he's like, dude, we're a touring band. Like we sell merch. Like you shouldn't
Yeah.
be here. And I was like, oh man, I'm sorry. I hadn't really thought about that. I'll remove
Hmm.
the 2 Stavesaker CDs that I have for sale.
Oh my
But
goodness gracious.
I remember feeling really disappointed in myself for having sold Stavesaker CDs the same night that they were performing. But yeah, man, that was indeed the start of it. I was simultaneously working at a really exciting company called Two Men and a Truck, based out of Cahaba Heights,
Right.
Very
Alabama,
exciting.
and yeah, very exciting. And so I was doing that in the day, and then at night I was showing up looking like the cool scene kid that I was, trying to pawn all kinds of random goodies on
Yeah.
unsuspecting kids like
Yeah.
Johnny.
So what year did Slacker 66 actually begin? Like when did that take place?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe would have been 97.
Hmm.
Okay.
I want to say. I think around there, 97, because yeah, I think by 98 we may have already moved to
That
West.
shop in Homewood.
But, yeah, there was the original Johnny Grimes Remembers shop in right near downtown Homewood.
Right.
That was it was tiny. It was on the second floor, and it had
Yep.
this little balcony.
Yep.
So you remember that one? So
I was there
That was
many
yeah.
times.
That was OG,
Yep.
and that's where it all started. Other than the distro,
Hmm.
and then about a year after being there, we got kicked out by the landlord because too many of you little skater punks, little what are they? I think they called everybody grommets or something back then. But anyway, yeah, the little skater grommets,
Sure.
the little punk rockers of Homewood, Alabama, were causing too much trouble for the businesses nearby.
Sure.
So that's when we moved to West Homewood and had a
Right.
little bit more space and had the venue. And yeah, it's crazy. I still there. I don't know if there's still there was like some kind of steak sandwich shop across the street from that.
Yes, there
old
was.
Slacker that was so good. Is it still there?
Things have changed. There's a
Yeah,
lot
I
of things
bet.
that have changed in that area right now. Things are still being
Yeah.
built, things that are changing
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. So that's
So let's talk about just your involvement or just getting interested in the music that you got interested in, because at some point you would have had to hear about all these bands and then decide I'm going to start promoting them, or I'm going to start,
yeah.
selling things about these bands and getting involved with these bands. So like in the 90s, I mean, we found out about a lot of these bands through you, to be honest. Like
Wow.
there was not a way to find out about them unless we went to a show, unless we heard something. And then like through you, we found out about like Blaster and all these other kind of bands. So
That's so crazy.
there in Homewood, or wherever you were from there, how'd you even get interested and hear about these bands?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I think that a lot of it actually goes back to my time living overseas. So I grew up as a missionary kid, meaning that my parents were missionaries in both the Caribbean and in South America, Christian missionaries. And I was a little hellion rebel kid. And somehow I discovered bands that were a little bit left of center, like the Dead Milkmen come to mind as a band that somehow I latched onto. And but just everything from Metallica to Bob Marley to a whole bunch of stuff in between that now we'd be like, oh man, that's it's like such mass appeal music, like even at some point just on a Sunday afternoon listening to top 40 pop radio and like some Casey Kasem or something, like going through and like listing off all these, like in the fifth spot, there's this band. And, But I don't know. I always appreciated music and I felt a connection to it. And then once I moved back to America, I had become really serious about my Christian faith. And I had discovered that there were all these kind of like, back then they called them alternative bands, alternative Christian bands. I don't think anybody calls a Christian band alternative anymore, but back then that was like a label, in the bookstores where you could buy this stuff. And I just thought that Christian bookstores were so lame, like occasionally there's a cool one, but usually they were pretty sad. And so I don't know. I think I just kept discovering all of this music that, I was surprised how good it was. I was surprised how much I related to it. And I also, at some point around that same time, I was in Florida, like near Pensacola, and there was a mall with a family Christian bookstore. This would have been like mid 90s. And this dude working there was legit, because I mean the bookstore was like probably 90% suck from my opinion at that time, but the 10% amazing was like really good. And that's where I first opened up a record that was completely silver on the front, silver on the back, opened it up with a bright orange CD in the case, in the tray. And back then you could listen to music on the little, like put these like headphones over your ears and like listen to this music. And I put in Starflyer 59 for the first time. And I was just like, I was like, what is going on? And so I bought Starflyer's silver album. And then I got into vinyl, and then I just realized that there was like this underworld of Christian artists. And I started going to Cornerstone Festival. I don't know. I just like latched on. I would go to shows. I discovered MXPX. I found, all the Tooth and Nail. Like once I saw that Tooth and Nail logo on the Starflyer album, I was completely enamored, and everything about the design, everything about the feel of that CD was different. And it like, I don't know. I feel like it kind of like called something out of me that was like, this is a direction that is way, way more creative and more powerful than anything that you've experienced so far. And so that was where it all started. I immersed myself in that world. And so by the time I had moved to Birmingham to get married in like 96, I was already going to shows. I was already where I was living for college. And then I remember going to what was Shades Valley Community Church. I think it met like in a Homewood Middle School or something, like not really old.
Yeah. And then also where you used to have Takehold Fest was in Shades Valley. And that was
exactly.
Like literally the backside of where Slacker ended up being.
Yeah.
Right there in West Homewood.
So I went to that church one Sunday, and I bumped into this guy named Jeff Stallcup, and he had a MXPX shirt on. And I was like, no way. I couldn't believe it, man. I thought that this stuff was like super underground, and you wouldn't just bump into somebody with a Blast or the Rocket Man shirt on, like that would never happen. So that just kind of started. Then I was like, okay, there's people here that like this music, and I don't know. I just realized pretty quickly I was not cut out for two men in a trucking. And so the whole idea of doing the distro was way more exciting and way more interesting. And
sure,
I thought skateboard, Star Wars toys, and Christian punk rock 7-inch vinyl was much more appealing to me.
Right on.
Moving somebody's armoire, like piano.
And then they labeled you as bistro, and then you were just like,
yeah, exactly.
Can make it, baby.
Yeah.
Now I'm a bistro.
That's when I was like, dude, come on. That was fun. But anyway, that's a long-winded way of how
it's all good
in that. But then I guess to connect it, because at that point I really I was probably like a lot of Christians were in that time. Like it was kind of frowned upon if you listen to artists that were not Christian. And I don't know if either of you remember this or experienced this, but it was like most people in the Christian world thought that if you were to even listen to an album by a artist that wasn't Christian, then there was some indication of your finding your lack of faith disturbing or something along those lines. So it was actually a huge eye opener for me to be in Birmingham and to start this little venue and to have this little shop, to have bands come through, and then to have someone like, I think it was either Jason Wasserman or, oh man, who would somebody came to me and was like, hey, can we borrow Slacker to like put on a show? It's not going to have any Christian bands. And I remember kind of having this initially, like, what do I do? We're not supposed to do that. But then it was like, man, but this is like, this feels like exactly what it should be about. And so that was that little like encounter with, maybe it was Jason and George from way back when, but I think it was. But anyway, that first sort of conversation, all of a sudden it opened up the floodgates for me going to shows in town that were definitely not Christian bands and not at Slacker, and then having bands that were not Christian at Slacker and Christian bands and non-Christian bands, all of a sudden it was just like a lot of really great music. Not every day of the week, but more consistently than it had been. So
yeah.
Birmingham really did give me the fuel that I needed to start in all of it. And I mean, everybody was so excited and so hyped up on having a place to go, and like it just felt like we were all in this season together, and it was very, very, very sweet.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because there's so many ties to you and to what you've done with creating Slacker 66 that it's interesting because like my brother was very much into it, but also I had a buddy of mine whose dad worked at CD Warehouse in Homewood, and evidently,
yeah, dude.
So evidently, and I guess he knew you. His name was Jeff Allred, but he was a fantastic guy, and his sons were my age, and so he would just like pass down like Under Oath hoodies with Takehold logos on the wrist.
Oh my goodness!
Like these were things that like we loved and appreciated, and so I'm not the only one. Of course, Josh, we all have stories about like how everything kind of ties in. I remember going to Takehold Fest at a fairly young age, but my brother took me around back and showed me that there was still a Slacker 66 sticker on the back of the garage door to where Slacker 66 used to be. And it was just, it's good to have someone to kind of show you the history,
Right.
And to kind of like push you forward.
Yeah.
And we think it's very important for people to be able to hear these kind of things.
Yes.
So,
well, yeah. And I mean, that CD warehouse, over there in downtown or right near downtown Homewood, I think was the first and only business to offer Furnace Fest tickets. So it was one of the only places. I mean, back in the day, to get a Furnace Fest ticket, you either had to call me and give me a credit card number, and I had like a janky card reader, and I would like I don't know, I don't even know how it worked. It was so
I don't remember that.
so antiquated. I can't remember how the thing functioned, but or you could go to CD Warehouse, or you could show up, and pay cash at the door.
Right.
But yeah, man, that's funny. Jeff had a great selection in that CD Warehouse, and I remember oftentimes going in there and being like, "Ooh, there's a lot of great CDs. I'm going to snag a bunch of these and try to resell them at Slacker."
Yeah.
Nice.
Or on eBay or something.
Absolutely. So you go from having, the shop, on the second story, which me and my friends used to come after school all the time, to having your venue on West Oxmoor. In and between then, you started the record label, Takehold. So was that just a natural overflow of like, I know these bands, I know this music, and I've got a venue, and now I want to like promote it even more? Like starting the record label is basically what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because as I was I was connecting with bands because I was already trying to track down CDs and merchandise to sell through the store. So if I would hear of a band that people liked or saw, you guys might come in and be like, "Hey man, we want, do you have any CDs by the Backups?" Like we saw
snap.
them, we saw them the other day, and I was like, "Oh, the Backups, like, let me check those guys out," And so then I'd be like, "Hey man, can I buy like 20 of your CDs?" So it was a little bit of having those conversations with bands, but then also once the venue opened, bands were coming through all the time, and I just kept seeing band after band after band that didn't have a label, didn't have a manager, didn't have a booking agent, and I just wanted to help them, even though I didn't know what I was doing, and I just thought the idea of running a label was really cool. So I was like, "Oh man, that." But it's crazy to think back, and bands like 238, who Brett Detter from the Juliana Theory produced their first two albums. Somewhere, I think one of them was like somewhere in like what's it called, Heart Soul or something, Alabama. Is there a
there's a Heart Cell. Heart Cell.
Is there Heart Cell? Yeah, somewhere, it was somewhere north of Birmingham, some crazy weird studio somewhere. Or bands like Under Oath. Under Oath came through on their first ever tour. I think that maybe their second show ever was at Slacker 66.
Oh my gosh,
or
really?
Second or third or fourth. It was like very early in their band life, and they all were just hanging out. They didn't have anything to do all afternoon before the show, so they're just hanging out. And I was like, "Hey, I do this record label. Sleeping by the Riverside was on Takehold." So they're like, "Hey, we want to introduce you to our friends in Under Oath.
Oh my
Watch
goodness.
it tonight. See what you think." I was like, "This Dallas Taylor character, he's crazy."
Yes.
But, I was like, all these guys are crazy, but yeah, it was just a lot of it was just being present, and just being in that world, and being mesmerized by it, but also being someone that wanted to see artists grow. And I was watching what was happening with Tooth and Nail, and I felt in my mind, Tooth and Nail was like so huge, and the success they were experiencing was actually very, very significant. But in my head, it was way bigger than even what it was. So yeah, it's a funny world when I think back on it, and the opportunities that the Anne Boleyn's, that came out of that.
Oh my goodness.
The the Ludacris's, the Saga 24/7s that
became we could talk about that all day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Ludacris's. That didn't you guys play shows with them or no?
We played shows and were friends with Ludacris and Saga 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Like traveled with them to play shows, and they came.
That's why, when I think of you guys, that's exactly what I think of. I don't know how I know that or where that memory, it was like situated.
Yep.
But somewhere it's back there, and I'm like, yeah, that totally aligns with what I remember.
Exactly right. And it's just
so
like
crazy.
It's the same thing though, of like we wouldn't have known had they not come here and played at one of these venues, and then us find out, and then we just like share information. And then that was just great that there was always a place for those kinds of bands to play.
Well, and back then you didn't have what we have now, the ease and functionality of just jumping on Instagram or Facebook or
Googling not at all.
Or, I mean, it's like most of what you discovered was word of mouth and just how it was. So
yeah,
crazy.
I'm always trying to figure that out, is how did bands even find out that they could come to Birmingham in 1997?
Good question.
That is
probably just talking with each other. Probably like one band would talk to another, and like there's this, because I mean back then I can remember bands calling me, and so someone must have told them like, hey, there's this place called Slacker 66. They'd have to like ask, like, I don't even, how would you even find a phone number back then? You probably had to call an operator.
Question.
Something crazy.
No,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Right now you could just be like, like I just go to my phone and type in Slacker 66 and it'd pop up all this information and reviews
100%.
and all this stuff.
100%.
Back then it's like, what friend do I know who's been to Birmingham? It's crazy.
We also have very fond memories of the Takehold Fests. They used to take place, and which you did out of, not necessarily, correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't do those out of Slacker. Early on, the Takehold Fest was out of Shades Valley. Literally right there.
For whatever reason. Yeah. Sorry. What was the last thing you said?
No. That's just what we remember the most, is like going to that building and going to those Takehold Fests. Numerous Takehold.
Yeah. I mean, it worked out so well because, as you know, there was like a back alley between these two sets of like warehouse buildings.
Yes.
And on one side, a little further, I guess that would be to the west, was Slacker. And then coming back on the other side was the church that we all attended, Shades Valley. And Shades Valley was, I mean, all of us, a bunch of us were youth leaders. My wife and I were youth leaders, Jeff and Park, like a lot of people that were kind of part of that scene in Slacker were the youth leaders who were introducing the kids to bands and skateboards and fireworks and 5 gallons of gasoline on New Year's Eve that we poured down in front of Slacker 66 all the way down the parking lot with a heaping pile of fireworks that we had left over from that evening. And we lit one side of it, and the whole like street in front of Slacker was just like,
I missed that. I missed that.
And we would play paintball back behind there. Like we'd all get suited up and shoot each other, and I'd have to break up fights because people were pissed off at each other because you shot me in the neck. What'd you get? What'd you think? We're like 17 with paintball guns.
Absolutely.
But the church was, I think their space was maybe double or even triple the size of, maybe even more than that, of Slacker. And somehow, I don't even know how I knew this, but somehow I intuitively knew that a Takehold Fest would not fit in a Slacker kind of space. So, and the church was free, and they just were like, hey, just, clean up the mess afterwards. I mean, I wouldn't get home till like 4 a.m. after Takehold Fest because of how much cleaning there was. Like, just, oh man, so tired. I'd be driving out to McCalla, just like trying to like stay awake. but I'd be like buzzing with excitement because it was just so raw, and the energy was incredible, and like just felt so special.
Right.
Yeah, and to see the bands that came through there, I mean, I remember distinctively when the sound system went out, when Dashboard played, and it was the Further Seems Forever Fairweather show, and it was just like
Yep.
everybody sitting down Indian style watching, Chris Carrabba,
Right.
Yeah.
But those were huge memories, for me
Absolutely.
as a young kid. So, I mean, yeah,
Me Without You.
Me Without You. I mean,
Yeah.
that was
The
crazy.
operation
Yeah.
turned into Me Without You. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wait, Operation was first?
Yeah.
See,
Yep.
didn't you tell me this?
Yeah, because the Operation played at Takehold. I mean, but they also played at Furnace Fest.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. And then Be Without You took place, and when I saw Me Without You for the first time, it was, I mean, they're all in suits. Aaron comes
Mhm.
rolling out with
Flowers.
and just beating everybody over the head with them. I mean, it was fantastic. But it's crazy because they had just gotten signed to Tooth and Nail, and I went to talk to Aaron, and he gave me a CD from Chad, the bass player of Hope's Fall, who had done a side project, an instrumental side project called Of Sinking Ships, that he's evidently he's still doing now. And so
Insane.
but
That
yeah,
is crazy.
a lot of great memories.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. It's a really it's really beautiful to like look back on how special all of that was, and to be able to, for me, like going to see bands like Hot Water Music and Avail, playing in, I don't know. I mean, it must have been like 150. It was like it was cooler and a little bigger, it felt like, than Slacker, but to see them in spaces where it felt similar in that the walls and the ceiling were just covered in sweat,
Oh yeah.
and like
Oh yeah.
somehow the moisture of so many bodies
Mhm.
sweating collectively in a room just starts like it's kind of disgusting when you think about it after having gone through a global pandemic, but
Mhm.
but back then it was just like that's how that was like one of the signs of a great show. If the ceiling was dripping sweat, then it was a really awesome show. And
Slacker would definitely, in the summer months, my
Yeah.
memories were definitely a lot of sweat.
Yep.
And I mean, it
Just-
really was.
I mean, it's essentially, yeah, it's essentially like its own variation of a hit workout today, except in a group setting and a whole lot more fun. But
Sure.
yeah, man, it's
So graduating from, I mean, let's just move into this. So like Takehold Fest was already a thing. All of us were, and coming to those and being a part, learning about new bands. At what point did it morph into Furnace Fest?
Man, I wish I knew exactly. So the first Furnace, I think that
You got souvenirs?
I do, but it's for year 2.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere I have the year 1 poster, but I don't remember where. I was thinking maybe that would help jog my memory.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I just recall, maybe because of how well the Takehold Fest had done and how much it seemed like the groundswell hardcore punk emo movement was just bubbling over in Birmingham and
Mhm.
in the South, generally speaking. It maybe felt like it was a possibility, and I think that we were working with enough bands coming through that it was like, hey, if we did a festival, would you guys be interested? So I think there were like opportunities to have conversations ahead of the festival that were
Mhm.
really great, and that gave me a lot of courage to actually consider the festival. But I don't know, man. I wish I could say that I guess maybe the closest memory that comes to me is like I visited Sloss Furnaces as a potential festival site. Like somebody had told me, probably Johnny, is like, you should go check out Sloss Furnaces. It's so sick. I don't know. He probably didn't sound like that at all. But anyway, horrible.
He sounds
Johnny
exactly like,
impersonation.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, sorry, Johnny. But somebody told me about Sloss, and
Yeah.
I'd never actually been there. I had driven past it a bunch, but I'd never like set foot on the site.
Mhm.
And I went by, and I was just completely and totally blown away that you could actually host music events at a space like that. And
Right.
I think as soon as I saw it, I've always been an opportunist. I think I've been a bit of a what's the best way to put it? I've been maybe an entrepreneur, but more so just like I found a vintage blue snaggletooth Star Wars toy from like 1977
Mhm.
in a little Homewood thrift store for $10. I can put this on eBay for $100. Like, that my brain's always kind of been wired like
Yeah.
to try to generate profit from something stupid that it's like, yeah, but dude, if you would have anyway, there's that's not me trying to give myself credit as a businessman. It's just kind of how I was wired. But
Yeah.
I think it was the same kind of thing. I saw Sloss as like that vintage, crazy expensive Star Wars toy that I
Mhm.
could make a 10x on just by picking it up. And then of
Mhm.
course, what I realized was that it's actually very, very difficult to turn a profit, and it takes an enormous lift to, especially in the early days to get a festival off the ground. But that was all I needed, was just seeing that location
Yeah.
and then dreaming about what the shed would look like with Under Oath playing
Right.
at 10 o'clock at night, with fire breathers and a slippery stage. And,
Oh my
like,
goodness.
like what kind of craziness could happen. But yeah, man, I can't really think of any other really specific memory or
Mhm.
kind of insight that would have come to me in terms of putting on Furnace Fest.
Yeah.
I wish it'd be interesting to talk to others. Do you either of you have any recollection of like old like why Furnace Fest came about?
Not
I feel
about,
like somebody probably
Brent,
recalls.
yeah.
It's like, oh dude.
Brent's got a
Yeah.
lot of memories from especially the very first one.
Yeah, I mean, Furnace Fest to me was kind of the
How
tipping.
old were you at the first Furnace Fest?
I was 14. So
Yes.
That's
it's
incredible.
funny because I love seeing the young kids
Wow.
now coming up there and kind of doing their
It's
thing
so
because
fun.
yeah, I mean, like when River first came, he was probably 14, which is Johnny's
Yes.
son.
Yes.
To me that's something special because
Mhm.
like
Yep.
we were included in a group to where it didn't matter your age. It was just about the
Mhm.
music and it was just a lot of fun. So I have a lot of different memories from different years, but I think the last year that it happened was when I actually had my driver's license and I was able to actually drive myself. So my brother
Nice. You were 18.
yeah, well, yeah, it was
Close to it.
close to it, yeah. But yeah, man, I
I
mean,
don't know what happened, but somehow I stopped being able to hear you. But I know what you're saying is awesome. I can feel it, but
You hear it right now?
I just can't hear it. I don't know what happened. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear us?
Weird. Yeah, now I can. All right, there we go.
Okay, cool.
There we go.
Nice.
Um,
So you were saying you were 18 or close to it. You came to the last one. You were driving. You actually drove to the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I drove to the last one, brought a few friends of mine. But yeah, I mean, I think what kind of was interesting to see was Dillinger Escape Plan when
Oh my
That
goodness.
was crazy.
that was probably the tipping point for me was just like I thought there was a riot happening.
Good. That would be a great assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
It was
pretty
the next closest thing to a riot. I would argue.
honestly Under Oath would be probably the next
Yep.
closest.
Oh.
Yeah. I
Because
mean, dude,
that was crazy.
Was that the year that they had the fire breather?
Yes.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that if you were anywhere on stage or near stage, the heat intensity coming out of that dude's mouth was like enormous. I remember thinking there is no way this is legal, and this is probably the most dangerous thing. I was just thankful that we were mostly surrounded by metal and concrete, you know. So, but they used to do that in venues. I think even in Slacker, the dude had his little fire breathing.
I don't remember.
I was like, man, this is, yeah.
Somebody's breathing fire.
And somebody's always breathing fire.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dillinger Escape Plan did too. So he had
they had a fire breather too. I forgot that.
Yes.
Well, the lead singer was like the main guy who did that.
Yes.
Right.
And so at one point, you know, they're tearing their amps apart.
I remember that.
Setting them on fire on stage, and then they're throwing them out in the crowd for everybody else to tear apart. And so that's when I thought it was like, this has gotten out of hand. My mom is not going to approve of this. And I'm never going to come back.
No.
It is. I mean, it's, I don't know. One of the secrets I would say is that I've always tried to commit myself to prayer before Furnace Fest. And I know some people listening are like, dude, whatever, man, it's fine. But it's just one of the things that I've, that's always been important to me. And so I think it's interesting, though not necessarily, I'm not claiming it's like a miraculous feat, although I would argue it's pretty close that Furnace Fest has now operated for 7 years without serious incident. And we've had very, very close calls, like extremely close calls to potential like severe bodily harm or death. And so it definitely hasn't been without its surprises and its thrilling moments. But I feel like Furnace Fest now is just, it's like the hardcore scene is so dialed in terms of how it moves and how it flows and how everyone supports each other that it's actually far safer, it feels like now, to be in the shed with 5,000 other people watching some crazy band and like jumping on one side of the stage, running, dancing around, flipping off the other side. I mean, it just, because it's like so, it's so full. And so it just feels like you're kind of cushioned by bodies. Whereas in the early days, it wasn't, I mean, it was, some years it was really packed, but not to the level that it's been recently. And I feel like it was way more like, to stage dive back then was like really, that was like taking a pretty significant risk.
But I will never forget Greg Walker doing a front flip during Andrew WK off of 2 stacks of subs. Right. I mean, it was insane.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Some of the stuff that has happened. And I mean, I think the worst that I can remember is the Nazis getting escorted out by the police because a fight broke out between them and the Godfrey Youth crew out of Atlanta. And one of the Godfrey Youth kids had they like filled stocks full of pennies, which is unbelievable to think that once upon a time we all had spare change in our pockets to the point where you could go to a festival and you could fill an entire sock with metal coins.
Oh,
that were just like on our persons, you know, like that's insane. Like
it was in the console of our car. We just grabbed it.
Now it'd be exactly. Now it'd be like car keys and iPhones, you know. I let me fill my sock with these things and go hit some Nazi over the head. But
oh my god,
that's crazy. Do you remember what year that was?
Oh man, I think that was 2002.
It'd been okay.
Yeah, it feels like that was the year, but I could be. I don't know. It's hard. It all becomes a blur.
Right.
But that feels right. What was one of your side stage memories, if any?
I don't have any.
That I honestly didn't. I spent very, very little time at the side stage, but I know that's where bands like Beloved, As I Lay Dying, Copeland, like a lot of incredible. I'm actually, while we're talking, I'm going to Google it. and tell
Yeah.
and name drop some more.
Okay.
Yeah, so Beloved. So I
Crazy.
actually have photos from side stage from those
What?
days.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so Beloved for sure was huge for me. And then Cool Hand Luke,
Yeah,
um,
Oh
exactly.
my goodness.
Copeland, and even like Bleeding Through later on. Um, some of those bands were just like fantastic to see. Yeah, Beloved was, I mean, that was kind of my world, was that kind of more emo,
Mm.
hardcore type stuff. But yeah. So I have tons of photos from that. And Operation played
Wow.
on the side stage.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm looking through a few. So yeah, you're right. Beloved, Copeland, Cool Hand Luke, Christensen, 238, Noise Ratchet, The Operation, Sworn Enemy. So funny.
Hmm.
Oh, that
Bleeding
one.
Through, Martyr AD, Asley Dying, Dynamite Boy, Open Hand, Unearthed, This Day Forward, Kid Gorgeous, Not Waving But Drowning, Symphony in Peril, Between the Buried and Me played at noon on the side stage.
Whoa.
That's so wild.
What a time.
Anyway, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny to go back and like just consider uh how different things were when, we didn't, most of these bands hadn't really even barely begun, let alone really hit their stride.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when Copeland dropped, Beneath Medicine Tree hadn't even come out yet. So they had just did their split, I think, with Pacifico or somebody. And I thought they were amazing. But it was
Hmm.
definitely more, I think in the early years, it seemed a lot more on the softer side for the side stage.
Yeah.
With 238, I remember seeing those guys play. But dude, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That's cool. Well, I have a question for you guys. Do you think, since we're promoting Furnace Fest as the end of an era, that this
Hmm.
truly is the end of an era,
Okay.
or is this just ploy marketing?
Is that the question? Is this
That's
the
the
end of an
question.
era?
Yeah, is this truly the end of an era, or is this just a marketing, like
What do you think,
Uh,
Brent?
you know, End of an era is kind of, to me, it's negotiable, because the end of an era for me was when Furnace Fest originally ended. So,
mhm,
that was kind of a period in my life, and then I got more into DIY and hardcore.
Hmm.
And then when this came back, it was like all of these refreshing feelings, and I was just gung ho about everything Furnace Fest. So I think there's shifts. There's always been these times where things change, and again, like you said, the dial has been kind of pulled back a little bit in regards to hardcore music. Everybody kind of knows what to do.
Hmm.
Back then, it was kind of wild. It was like the Wild Wild West. Uh, and so I think that's just, it gives opportunity for newer bands with newer ideas and things that change, to kind of move forward. And I think it's a good opportunity, but
Hmm.
I think it should continue.
That's what Brent says.
yep. What about you?
No, I
What
mean,
does JD say?
there's no reason for it not to continue. I mean, I think anybody who's been coming the last, what, since 21, so the last 3 years, would want to see
Mhm.
some kind of permutation of this. They want to see
Yeah.
something that's going to be something they look forward to, something to bet on each and every year, no matter what the music is. I mean, there's going to be a plethora of hardcore bands. There's going to be a plethora of, some of these heavier bands. But I think, especially in Birmingham right now, in Birmingham, if I could just speak of that, there's nothing like it, right? I mean, there's
Mhm.
nothing that's happening like that in Birmingham. And so I think everybody would be looking forward to, something that would present new music, nostalgic music, something like that every single year.
Festival wise. Yeah,
Festival
festival
wise.
wise. We've
Yeah.
always had a DIY scene that's continued on.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Festival is what I'm speaking about.
yeah.
Yeah. That kind of
And
thing.
that's huge. And it's interesting because it gets a lot of people questioning why, like, what's happening, and they have more access. So like you said, social media is very much plays a part. People might know Manchester Orchestra, but they may not know 238.
No.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's something that kind of opens up doors. And
Right.
That's another reason why we want to have these conversations with people like you and other people, is to kind of figure out, people may not be able to correlate and connect the dots.
Yes.
And we want to be here to kind of help do that.
Right.
So,
that's cool.
but yeah, I think Furnace Fest should continue, whether it's Furnace Fest or not.
It's a done deal, Chad.
So,
yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
We're going to rebrand it as Fest Furnace. Really cool.
Perfect.
And people are like, what in the world?
Yeah. I mean,
no,
but
it's cool to hear that. Thank
you.
Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. I mean, and what you guys have already done, it's already opened up. I mean, look, he just talked about a minute ago. I mean, Johnny's son coming, my son coming this last year, him stage diving during Thursday, was a highlight of his life. And
how old is your son now?
14, about to be 15.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he brought his buddies, I mean, he told them that this was happening, and brought his buddies there, and they're stage diving and going to see Thursday for the first time, Turnstile for the first time, these kind of things. So very similar to you in being there for the first time at age 14. It's a whole new experience for some of these kids, and just passing that experience on to them. It's really, really exciting to see.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, my son David was, I guess, 14 or 15 for his first Furnace Fest.
Okay.
And, on day one, he was just staying super close to us, almost almost exclusively backstage, watching bands from the back. And then the second day, he was like wanting to go out in front more. And by the third day, I texted him because he was nowhere to be found. And I was like, where are you right now? And he sent me a picture, and he was in the pit for the Judas Cradle. Nice. I was just like, wow, in 3 days.
Yeah.
He went from like not leaving my side, staying in the, the safe places, to hanging out with Clayton Kidd and the gang.
One guy that I remember from Takehold Fest is Clayton Kidd. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, man, there's no forgetting him.
No.
He's a champion.
I forgot. I have to tell you this too, because you mentioned the backups earlier. The Homewood scene and then Takehold scene. So you'll be happy to know that Matt Parsons and I live across, down the corner from each other, and our daughters are best friends.
Wow, that's amazing.
Isn't that nuts?
Well, dude, that is really nuts.
Yeah,
that is so crazy. I mean, it's wild. Is that out in what's it called? Iron something?
No, we're in Vestavia.
Oh, you guys are in Vestavia? Dang, you got the upgrade. That's good, man. Because Matt used to live somewhere out there.
He lived in Irondale. Yeah.
Irondale. Yeah. Irondale.
That's right. But I mean, it's so wild. I mean, to see, I knew him from way back when. I mean, those 97 days, 98 days, like the Slacker days, and then seeing his band play and him seeing our band play. And then fast forward virtually 20 years later, and then to run into each other and have those same connections.
That's so
and
wild.
then him being the only guy that I would know that could look at this sweatshirt and say yes.
Yep. I know what that is.
Yes, I know what that is.
If you go into a coffee shop anywhere in Birmingham and get recognized on the basis of that hoodie, that's, you found a good person.
Bingo.
Yep.
Bingo.
All right, sweet. Let's hang. Well, it's cool. No, it's exciting. I feel very honored and privileged to have had the opportunity to bring Furnace Fest back to Birmingham, and just to enjoy, to introduce the beauty of that city to so many people who are like, Birmingham. I would never, all the comments used to be, I I would never ever go to Alabama for anything, you know.
Mhm.
And now it's like people booking flights left and right to
Exactly
Alabama.
right. Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I mean, I always just drive in. I lived in Nashville and now I live in Chattanooga, and so it's just an easy drive. But I've heard that anyone flying in for like 3 days before the festival, the flights are like kind of normal. Like if you live in San Francisco or in I don't know, Portland, Maine, your flight to Chicago O'Hare or especially to Atlanta is going to be probably mostly normal. But then every flight from like Atlanta into Birmingham is just loaded with hardcore kids.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like hits breaking out in the bathroom on a Delta flight. It's
That's
crazy.
awesome. I love it. I love the fact that
It's
you guys
fun, man. It's a great gift. That's for
you
sure.
guys have you have brought it back, and it's been a
Mhm.
huge, I mean, excitement for all of us. So it's been
Absolutely.
great. So we really appreciate having you on, man. I know our time's kind of coming down, but
Mhm.
really appreciate you coming on, talking about these things.
Sure.
We'd love to have you back on later on.
Yeah, of course.
Even before Furnace Fest kicks off, if you have
Absolutely.
time. We want to get Johnny on because we want to get his
Yeah, dude,
perspective.
that would be amazing to have both me and Johnny on, and then maybe Johnny could help, uh, fire off some brain cells and some memories that have
Yeah.
somehow, seem to have disappeared over the years, but they're there somewhere. But yeah, man, thank you guys so much for having me, for including me in this. It's awesome what you guys are doing, and where can I find this, by the way? What, because I Googled it and I found Taylor Swift. What's
Yeah.
where's the like Apple Podcast or Spotify, or what's the easiest
It's
way for me
coming
to-
soon, Chad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's coming soon.
Coming soon.
Thanks, guys. Have
Yeah.
a fantastic night. Look forward to
You
seeing you
too.
soon.
We
Yeah, thanks,
appreciate it
Chad.
so much, Chad. Thank
See you,
you.
buddy.
You too.